Good afternoon, everybody. I am Cantor Michael Shockett, one of the clergy here at Temple Rodef Shalom. I'm here with Sam Simon, who represents, he's a past president, represents the leadership and the congregation this afternoon. We are here with heavy hearts, here to support our friends, Charlotte, Jimmy, Nicole, Judy, Michael, Hadley, Joel, Steve, and Karen, as we remember Paul Chandler, husband, father, father-in-law, grandfather, brother, uncle, and dear friend. Joel and Steve, we are also thinking of your mother, Sina, Paul's sister in Ohio, who I'm told was heartbroken because of what Paul meant to her. She's unable to travel, and we wish her the deepest condolences too. We come together united in prayer to remember and pay tribute to Paul, celebrating the life of a man who loved to talk to people, empathized with them, saw positivity wherever he could, respectful, even when he disagreed with you, obsessed with the Boston Celtics, but not as much as the Red Sox, a role model for Jimmy and Judy, and a husband to Charlotte for 59 years. Truly, there are no words that can capture the heaviness of this loss for your family. But one thing I do know is that in this sanctuary there is love, lots of love, and lots of memories. Love for all of you. There is sympathy and compassion. There is kindness and gentleness and support. And all of you bring into this sanctuary wonderful memories, hundreds and hundreds of memories of Paul. Mourning is the price we pay for having the courage to love others. Even in grief, we know that the wonder of human life is too complex and too magnificent to be memorialized in endless pain. The gifts of spirit Paul gave us cannot be measured or weighed, nor can they be lost or even tarnished by time. Even in our darkest hours, we know that some of his light and his warmth will always be with us, bringing comfort and courage, and in the fullness of time, healing and peace. Mourning is a time filled with many emotions and memories, both bitter and sweet. We begin our service with the recitation of psalms and prayers, thus linking Paul's life with the millennia-old tradition of the people Israel and the eternity of God. May our words and our prayers help all of those who mourn find inner strength and peace so that we may make Paul's life and memory a blessing. Many of us find comfort in the words of our tradition. We turn to them now, for they remind us that Jews have turned to psalms and poems to support us and others as God does in life and in death, in joy as in sorrow. I'll begin with Psalm 23, "The Lord is my shepherd," which reminds us that God is our shadow, staying with us, watching over us in our world and the Olam Haba, the world to come. Adonai roi lo exar, binot desheyar bitseini, al mei menuchot inaleini, nafshi Aruch lefanai shulchan neged sorerai dishanta Hashem en roshi osirev haya ach tov chesed yirdefuni kol yemei chayai v'shavti beveit Adonai leorech yamim. If you know the words of this psalm, I invite you to join me. God is my shepherd, I shall not want. God makes me lie down in green pastures, leads me beside still waters, and restores my soul. O God, you lead me in right paths for the sake of your name. Even when I walk in the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You have set a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You have anointed my head with oil, my cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of God forever. And Psalm 15 is a psalm that speaks of people who are inherently of good character and treated people well. It reads, "Do we deserve to enter God's sanctuary? Can we merit a place in the presence of God? Live with integrity, do what is right, speak the truth without deceit, have no slander upon your tongue, do no evil to others, do not mistreat your neighbor, spurn a contemptible person, but honor those who revere God. Never retract a promise once made, though it may bring you harm. Lend no money at unfair rates. Accept no bribes against the innocent. Make these deeds your own, then shall you stand firm forever." I want to call forward Steve Goldman, nephew of Paul, to share a poem by Merit Malloy.
When I die, give what's left of me away to children and to old men that wait to die. And if you need to cry, cry for the brother walking the street beside you. And when you need me, put your arms around anyone and give them what you need to give me. I want to leave you something better than words or sounds. Look for me in the people I've known or loved. And if you cannot give me away, at least let me live in your eyes and not in your mind. You can love me best by letting hands touch hands and by letting go of children that need to be free. Love doesn't die. People do. So when all that's left of me is love, give me away.
And finally, a poem by Rabbi Chaim Stern, thinking about someone who dies after a long illness. The poem says, "It is a fearful thing to love what death can touch. A fearful thing to love, hope, dream. To be, and oh, to lose. A thing for fools this, and a holy thing to love. For your life has lived in me, your laugh once lifted me, your word was gift to me. To remember this brings a painful joy. 'Tis a human thing, love, a holy thing to love, what death has touched." Now I'd like to invite Paul's daughter-in-law, Nicole Chandler, who will play for us a piece by Frédéric Chopin, Prelude, Opus 28, number 4, playing this for her father-in-law, a lover of music. Thank you, Nicole. In just a moment, we'll hear from family members as we learn about Paul's life and his defining attributes. But before we begin the eulogies, I want to share a couple of thoughts myself. I've known Paul for the last 28 years, and what I admired about him was his love of Judaism, his ability to easily engage with people, and how he listened, gave his opinions, and respected others who had differing opinions. He did not shy away from emailing us when he disagreed with sermons or articles we wrote. But Rabbi Schwartzman, who probably received the most emails from Paul after she would give a sermon, says, Paul embodied humility in what he wrote. One story she relayed was that he wrote to her critiquing a Yom Kippur sermon years ago, but he wrote it in a very respectful way, which is not usually the case in our world. Paul praised her for her words about how deeds that we do impact people without us possibly even knowing it. He said that that thought of Rabbi Schwartzman's was the most meaningful part of the sermon because he experienced that himself. And he then relayed to her a story about summer camp when he was 12. He and his friends were horsing around in their cabin. He said he came crashing down on one of the bunks on Marty's bed, his bunkmate, only to see some strange thing under the sheets. He looked further and discovered that there was a rubber bed cover there to protect the sheets from the boy who obviously had accidents in the middle of the night. Paul's curiosity and exposure of this led to his bunkmate being ridiculed and embarrassed in front of all the kids in his bunk. Paul said he did not intend to embarrass Marty, but it happened, and felt even worse when the camp director later announced to the whole camp how someone had done a terrible thing that day. Paul said that even though the director didn't say who did the terrible thing, everyone knew what happened, and the counselors all glared at him. He said it bothered him for 60 years. Marty and Paul became friends later in high school, but never spoke about this incident. That is, until their 50th high school reunion, when the two were talking about challenging experiences in their lives. And Marty said to Paul, I remember an unkind thing you did at Camp Jabaco. Paul told Rabbi Schwartzman it was the first time we had ever spoken of that event and the first time I had ever explained my version of what happened and the first time I apologized for it. Paul had lived with that his whole life, and he finally felt relieved after 59 years of holding that in. He affirmed Rabbi Schwartzman's thesis that how our inadvertent acts can affect others in ways we might not even know. That conversation with Marty at their 50th year reunion allowed Paul peace after all those years. Paul was born in Boston, Massachusetts, 85 years ago, where he grew up a devoted Red Sox fan and developed the curiosity and discipline that shaped his life. He studied mathematics at Northeastern University, a path that led to a 40-year career in the computer industry long before computers became available or even known to many of us. Much of his work was in public service, first as a computer programmer and analyst for a government contractor, and later as a federal employee of the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office, where he retired with the rare honor of the federal agency registering a trademark in his honor. Paul loved telling stories, as you know, and you may have heard one or two a few times. He was known for saying, "Have I ever told you this story before?" And no matter what you said, he would then go on to tell it. Paul was an eternal optimist who above all cherished family, friends, and his Jewish community. He lived by kindness and respect, thoughtfulness, and an open mind. He found joy outdoors in such things as golfing and hiking and horseback riding, and gave back to the world in retirement by volunteering at the Jewish Federation of Washington and the Holocaust Memorial Museum. May Paul's memory be a lasting blessing. We'll hear first from Paul's daughter Judy and his granddaughter Hadley, and then from his nephew Joel Goldman, and finally, Paul's son Jimmy.
Thank you, everyone, for being here today. It really means a lot. What stands out most to me about my dad is that he was truly unique. I have countless memories and stories that reflect his uniqueness, and today I would like to share a few with you. If you knew my dad, you knew he was never short on stories, opinions, or conversation. He had an incredible ability to connect with just about anyone. He taught me to think independently and to be open-minded and empathetic towards others. That same sense of commitment defined his marriage to my mom, who he was devoted to for nearly 60 years. That ability to connect showed up everywhere. He talked to strangers like old friends and could turn a ski lift ride into a full life history exchange. Along his storytelling came his jokes, often repeated ones, which I think you will hear in most of the speeches today. He would always say to my close childhood friend Lynn, who happened to live on Lynn Street, "If you lived on our street, would your name be Rosecroft?" He also had his preferences. My dad had a deep affection for Marriott hotels. He was part of an exclusive group for Marriott Bonvoy insiders and loved to share his insights about Marriott hotels with just about anyone. When we traveled, Mike often joked, "We have to stay in a Marriott so your dad's not mad at us." And one of the most important things to know about my dad may be his lifelong hatred of peaches. During one of my recent visits with him, he seemed genuinely offended by my Peaches record store shirt with a big peach on it, though, of course, that's just his usual sarcastic sense of humor. That sarcasm was something we shared, along with a love of skiing and coffee, to name a few. Many of the memories that stand out from my childhood include our annual West Virginia trips with the Havara, as well as many ski adventures in Vermont, Colorado, and other states. My dad's love of coffee is something my elementary school friends remember to this day. They would come to our house after school for his special recipe for coffee milk, which he learned to make while working at a soda fountain in Boston as a teenager. One of my friends here today said he basically invented Starbucks. He also loved coffee blends. He may be one of the few people who blended coffee blends with coffee blends to make his own unique coffee blend. But as much as he enjoyed his interests, what mattered most to him was his family. When we were kids, he woke up during the 4 o'clock hour many mornings so he could get home from work early enough to spend time with us. It never occurred to me then how unusual that was, or how much I took it for granted, especially considering how I feel about getting up early. Another childhood friend who was always at our house growing up said, after my dad's passing, "Your dad was a role model to me. He showed me what it meant to be a devoted family dad, and he was an important part of my childhood." And it never even occurred to me that any of my friends noticed these things. That commitment only grew when he became Grandpa Paul. He adored his only grandchild, Hadley. While he was always proud of her, I think his proudest moment was last year when he was able to stand on the bima here at the temple with all of her grandparents during her bat mitzvah. He bonded with Hadley when he and my mom picked her up from preschool, met her at the neighborhood bus stop, and braved the very long camp carpool lines here every summer at the temple. We shared summer vacations in Rehoboth Beach, and my parents passed along their love of the National Symphony Orchestra with Hadley, who has played the violin since 4th grade at a Kennedy Center performance, which will always be the Kennedy Center. I know how much my dad treasured the time Hadley spent with him in hospital rooms, rehab centers, and his assisted living facility, listening to his stories and talking with him. Whenever I asked her if she wanted to visit him, it was always yes. This is not typical for your average teenage girl. Toward the end, when he could no longer speak, she sat with him and read a book about the 50 greatest moments in baseball. Even though he couldn't tell her, I'm sure it meant the world to him. Because of his illnesses, I probably spent more time talking with my dad during this last year than I had in the previous 10. During that time, I learned new and surprising things about him and many stories about our family that I had never heard before. And while this wasn't like the best time in our lives, I am so grateful for those times we had together. But what stands out the most about the last year and a half is my dad's positive attitude. He spent more days than I can count in the hospital, and he rarely let it get him down. He remained easygoing with the staff who cared for him, and he kept his sarcasm intact even when he could barely speak. The only time I ever heard him get angry with the hospital staff was when they tried to serve him peaches. And this actually happened more than once. After each illness, he fought hard to rehabilitate and bounced back in ways that often seemed impossible. That determination, along with his positivity, allowed him to persevere through many challenges. Watching him face so much with grace, humor, and resilience has been inspiring, and it is something I will take with me forever.
Hi, everyone. My name is Hadley Chandler Rugel, and I am Paul Chandler's granddaughter. My grandfather was an amazing person. He was fun, loving, great at math, positive, and what is probably his most prominent attribute, a storyteller. He had endless stories to tell. Stories of his family that he could tell over and over again, or stories of his job, from his experiences working on his computers through Y2K to slightly less interesting tales of the difference between trademarks and patents. I was 8. I wish I could say I'd paid more attention than I did. He was always positive, even when he was in the hospital. Even when he was dealing with doctors and no sleep and the atrocities that are hospital food, he rarely complained. Well, except about the hospital food. And even then, he always seemed in good spirits and never took it out on anyone else, no matter how much he may have had a right to in some times. He was great at math. I remember one time when I was in 3rd or 4th grade, he was trying to help teach me math and stayed patient even when I got frustrated, even when I couldn't memorize basic times tables. He always wanted to know what I was learning about in school and was particularly interested in math. And he was loving. He'd go out of his way to help people. When I was young, Grandpa had cancer, and I couldn't see him often or play with him because of his weakened immune system. I didn't really get to know him quite as much when I was a kid, and honestly, we weren't really as close. But when I got older, all of that changed. We grew very close, and I saw Grandpa all the time, twice a week on Mondays and Thursdays when he'd pick me up from things. One day, we were at a high holiday service, which was held outside, and Grandpa was late. I was so bored without my grandparents there, and when I saw Grandpa outside, I went running at top speed. He told me that was one of his happiest memories, realizing that I was so excited to see him and we were finally close despite all of that lost time when I was little. And Grandpa was fun. He definitely had a sense of humor. That was clear when he made jokes. Some of them were really funny. Some of them a little less funny. Grandpa loved music. He put on the radio whenever we were in the car, and more often than not, he'd have a story to share about the musician on the radio. He'd have joking debates with my dad about Chuck Brown versus Chuck Berry. Or maybe they weren't jokes. I never knew quite how serious they were. I know stories about a lot of musicians no kids my age would normally know exist because of Grandpa. Because when he told his music stories, I actually paid attention. Minus the patent and trademark story, he was able to tell every story in an interesting way, even when they'd been repeated 1,000 times. Something about the way he said them. He just made everything fun and funny and interesting. In everything Grandpa did, he was a friendly, kind, thoughtful, and amazing person, and I will always miss him. And I know because of how great a person was, everyone here today will, and anyone who ever met him knows how amazing a person he was. Thank you for listening.
It's a hard act to follow. Thanks, Hadley. I'm Joel Goldman. I am Uncle Paul's oldest nephew, and I'm 62 years old, and 59 and a half years ago, one of my parents, or both of them, thought it was a good idea to bring me to Paul and Charlotte's wedding, a 2.5-year-old. And my father, who at the time was a rabbinic student, when he was up there doing the Kiddush, which I did every week with him at the table in our, where I was growing up in Cincinnati, I wanted to be up on the bima with my dad doing the Kiddush, as he did it for Paul and Charlotte's wedding. So I caused a little bit of a scene, which ended up my mom dragging me out and missing the rest of her brother's wedding. And anyway, my first memories of Uncle Paul are hearing about how he would pay me back one day, and for that. And it really became real as my bar mitzvah was approaching, and now he enlisted Jimmy and Judy. He told me to sit in the front row and to make sure that that the payback was coming. And so I remember that day that Paul, Charlotte, Jimmy, and Judy being up front, and I could see them throughout my whole bar mitzvah, and I just kept wondering, is it coming? Is it coming? And it never came. Nothing but love, support, and smiles, and came from them that day. And he just likes to be sarcastic, and I guess for 13 years had this planned. But what I've noticed as I've talked to my mom and to my brother and my niece and even our cousin Ellie from Canada in the last few days is that the one theme we all have is that Uncle Paul always showed up for all of us for everything, whether it was graduations, every birthday there was a card with a check, and then as I got older, there became a donation to my favorite charity. He just never forgot, and he was always there for us, no matter what was going on in our lives. And he even in the last year, as he was having his own health challenges, he really helped me as I was navigating being caregiver for my own mother on what to do as he was going through it himself. So he was always there all the time. But he was mostly there for me. The moment that I really remember was 36 years ago when I was diagnosed with HIV, and there wasn't really a lot of hope at that time. And he really would talk to me and call me and made me feel like I had the support of my family, and I did. And because of that, I ended up going on the college lecture circuit because I did have support and love, and I knew that I would be okay to tell my story and help other people understand how they can support other people, but how they can also avoid getting it if they were younger. And I got to say, every time I spoke, probably within 100 miles of Washington, D.C., my Uncle Paul was there, and he just showed up, and he just, continued to show up then, and he continued to show up the last year, and I think that's really the theme of who he is. He was really dedicated to family, and for that, I'm grateful that he was my uncle, and thank you all for being here. Jimmy.
If you can't see this in the back. I'm a Nationals fan, so this hurts. Okay, the problem with doing it on an iPad is it wants a passcode. I got it. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Dad's son, Jimmy. Legally, my name's James, but they always call me Jimmy, so please call me Jimmy. One of the things I do professionally is I'm been a public speaker, and I even teach people public speaking. But I speak about my work industry and to people about what I do for work. So my mom's never seen me give a speech. Mom, I want you to know, I don't usually cry. I'm better than that. You've heard so many stories today and heartfelt remembrances from Judy and Hadley, Joel, and Cantor. I hope you already knew what a good man Dad was, how upbeat and positive he was, and kind and generous. So what I'd like to do for a few minutes is to share a few stories of Dad's life. You've heard about stories already today too, and how he impacted me. So I'm going to be a little self-centered in this eulogy. I hope that's okay. And I hope you get a sense of who Dad was, maybe in ways you didn't know. Something I hear parents often say is something along the lines of, I just want my kids to be happy. My parents, I believe above all else, wanted me and Judy to be good people. Of course, they wanted us to be happy too, but being a good person was even more important. There's a famous story where a man wanted to convert to Judaism. He first went to a great rabbinic scholar named Shammai, and he said to him, "Convert me on the condition that you teach me the entire Torah while I am standing on one foot." Rabbi Shammai thought this was ridiculous and threw him out. That same man went to the great rabbinic scholar Hillel, and he said the same thing. But Hillel responded, "Okay." As the man stood on one foot, Hillel said to him, "That which is hateful to you, do not do to another. That is the entire Torah, and the rest is its interpretation. Go study." Hillel, like my dad, who, if you don't know this, his middle name was Hillel, respected everyone, was an eternal optimist, and saw the best in people. Mom and Dad gave generously to numerous charities. Dad volunteered here at the temple many times for many years. When he retired, he volunteered 2 days a week for the Jewish Federation and the Holocaust Museum, and he was at the Holocaust Museum for over 2 decades. If a friend or a family member, even sometimes a stranger, needed help, he would show them kindness and generosity. Even before today's service, I've received multiple stories since his passing from friends and relatives that show this. He both told me and my sister and the people around him how to be good, and he modeled for us what being good is. Some of my earliest memories of my life are Dad telling me stories while he was shaving in the morning. Sometimes Dad had to shave twice because he had a really thick beard. For example, how he met Mom and fell in love in a traffic jam on their third date driving home from seeing the fall foliage in Shenandoah National Park. He said that day was the only time in his life where he didn't mind being stuck in traffic. And we would then go back to Shenandoah many times, hiking and camping over the years. He would tell stories about my parents' wedding, or the time the shaving cream can exploded when he was living with his best friend Art, or something about his parents or his older sister Sina. When we would go out to dinner, which we didn't do a lot because I think I, more than my sister, was not very good at it, behaving. When we were little, Dad started a tradition where he would make up crazy stories of where the food came from and what the chefs had to do to prepare our meals. It was just fantastical. The stories would get more and more elaborate as time went on as a way to entertain us. I'm pretty sure he had more fun telling those stories than we had listening to them, but I loved them. Can't speak for my sister. As you can see, Dad was a sports fan. specifically the Bruins, the Celtics, and the Red Sox. Unfortunately for someone from a city that won 6 Super Bowls, he didn't care about football. But Dad's first love and greatest was the Red Sox. He saw Ted Williams play in person at Fenway. As a kid growing up poor in Boston, he could take public transit to a game, to the greatest ballpark in the world, get a program, a bleacher seat, a kosher hot dog, and a soda for under $2. Today, he could probably tell you how much that would be with inflation, because he was so good at math. But as of 2004, it had been 86 years since the Celtics had won the World Series. Dad had just turned 64 in October of 2004, which was 1 year after the Sox had blown yet another American League championship to the hated Yankees in an absolutely heartbreaking fashion in a deciding Game 7. And in 2004, the Sox got back to the American League championship and lost the first 3 games. The day after the 3rd game, I called him on the phone. He said as soon as he picked up, before I could get a word out, I'm done and I'm not watching any more of the series. And don't talk to me about it. So I complied with his wishes and didn't say a word for 2 days. If you're a baseball fan, you know what happened next. That night in Game 4, the Red Sox were down to their last out against the greatest relief pitcher of all time. They won that game in extra innings that ended after 1 a.m. They won the next game in extra innings. That was Game 5 in dramatic fashion. So the day after Game 5, I called Dad. Can I mention the Red Sox? Oh, I watched both games. For those of you who live under a rock or couldn't care less about sports, they went on to beat the Yankees in 7 games, win the World Series, and win 3 more between 2007 and 2018. He was just so proud to be a Red Sox fan. I mean, he wore this hideous thing. I think if Dad had to choose only one form of entertainment among books, TV, movies, and music that he could have for the rest of his life, it would be music. He connected with early rock and roll from the beginning of the genre. He was 14 when Elvis, 15 when Chuck Berry first started. He would never tire of listening to or talking about his favorites, like Chuck Berry, Little Richard, Fats Domino, Jerry Lee Lewis, Ray Charles. But he loved other kinds of music too. He loved classical, Beethoven's Ninth. He loved when the cannons would fire off at the end of the 1812 overture. When popular music became dominated in the 70s by disco and new wave, he switched over to country, especially the outlaws like Willie and Waylon. Well, over the past year or so, Dad was in and out of the hospital and rehab facilities multiple times. And about a year ago, Dad was stuck in a rehab room with nothing much to do most of the day. And knowing how much Dad loved music, especially 50s and 60s rock and roll, I thought he would enjoy this podcast that I listened to occasionally called A History of Rock and Roll in 500 Songs. I had recommended other podcasts to him over the years, and he never was interested. He just would put on his XM radio. But this time he said, yeah, I'll give it a try. So I had to download a podcast app to his phone. He wasn't great at this point in his life using the phone. So I was kind of worried that, would this work out if I wasn't in the room? Turns out I shouldn't have worried. I left him that night, having downloaded a few episodes. The first few, he listened to these in order from podcast 1. And when I came back that next day, I asked if he liked the podcast. He had already listened to like a dozen episodes. And we went on to discuss what he learned about some of his favorite music and influences. That podcast was a source of enjoyment for Dad and discussions for us for many, many months. So I have his phone now so we can get into accounts and stuff. And I looked on the phone yesterday in the podcast app. And he was all the way up to episode 146. And there are some episodes that have multiple parts, so he's probably listened to more than that. And episode 146 is the Beach Boys song, Good Vibrations, which is one of his favorite songs. But he never finished the episode. As I've gotten older, I still loved hearing many of my dad's stories, and when I couldn't remember a detail, I'd ask him to tell it to me again. I wish I had written more of them down. One of the most comforting things that has helped me since Dad's passing are all the stories people have shared with us about Dad. How much people appreciated his kindness and positive outlook and sense of humor. So thank you to anyone here in person or anywhere else that has sent us a note or posted on Facebook or told a story to us about Dad and how he made an impact on them. But I want to close with one last anecdote. As Cantor Schock had said earlier, Dad loved to share his opinions, including in writing. Opinions about sports. He wanted more intentional fouls called at the end of NBA games. Or politics, or something in the Jewish community, or something about the temple he felt could be done differently or better. And as you know, have heard, he emailed Rabbi Amy many, many times. One of the things he loved about Amy is that she respected his opinions and valued them, even when they disagreed. Again, I'm repeating. Like my dad, I'm repeating a story. He also loved to tell me about these interactions with Amy. And there was one story in particular about Dad and Amy that I wanted to share with you today. Sorry. The problem is, I can't remember all the details of that story exactly. And I want to get it right out of respect for Dad. But the person I want to ask about what happened isn't here anymore. And that's something we'll all have to live with forever. I miss you. Goodbye, Dad.
Wow, thank you, Jimmy, and thank you, Judy and Hadley and Joel. We learned so much more, and I learned so much more about Paul listening, hearing you. And as we all take a moment to reflect on the memories you just heard, I want to share a song with you. It's called Yesh Kochavim. It means there are stars. And the words were written by the Hungarian poet and resistance fighter during the Holocaust, Hannah Senesh. Her poem uses the light that we see from the stars as a metaphor for the presence of those people that we have loved and lost. There are stars up above, so far away we only see their light. Long, long after the star itself is gone. And so it is with people that we loved. Their memories keep shining ever brightly, though their time with us is done. But the stars that light up the darkest night, these are the lights that guide us as we live our days. These are the ways we remember as we live our days. These are the ways we remember. יש כוכבים שאורם מגיע ארצה, רק כאשר הם עצמם עבדו בעינם. יש אנשים שזיו זכרם מאיר, כאשר הם עצמם אינם עוד בתוכנו. אורות אלה המאביקים בהשקעת הליל, הם שמרים לאדם את הדרך, הם שמרים לאדם את הדרך, In just a few moments, we'll conclude our service here in our Mishkan. And following this service, you are all invited to our social hall for the mourner's meal. The social hall, if you go out to the left as you exit the Mishkan, just follow the hall all the way to the end of the building on the other side, and you'll find the social hall. And I invite you to stay at your places when we're all finished so that the mourners, I can escort them out, and then you can follow behind. If you're interested in making donations, a gift of tzedakah in memory of Paul, the family requests you consider the Holocaust Memorial Museum. And then there will be an open house at Judy's on Saturday, and you can email her the times that people are welcome to come or speak with her later today. O God, you give us loved ones and make them the strength of our life, the light of our eyes. They depart and leave us bereft on a lonely way. But you, O God, are the living fountain from which our healing flows. To you the stricken look for comfort and the sorrow-laden for consolation. O God, we see life as through windows that open on eternity. We see that love endures and the soul endures, as you, O God, endure forever. We see that the years are more than grass that withers, more than flowers that fade. They weave a timeless pattern in a world that is the dwelling place of your love and glory. We rise now, if it's comfortable for you, for the recitation of El Malei Rachamim. El Malei Rachamim, Shochein b'Maromim, Hametzei Menucha Nechona, תחת כנפי השכינה, עם קדושים וטהורים, כזוהר הרקיע, מזהירים את נשמת שרגא הלל בן יוסף ושרה, שהלך לעולמו. בעל הרחמים, יסתירהו בסתר כנפיו לעולמים, ויצרור החיים את נשמתו, אדוני הוא נחלתו, וינוח בשלום על משכבו, ונאמר Amen. O God of abundant mercy and compassion, God Most High, may the soul of our loved one, Paul Hillel Chandler, who has gone into eternity, find the gift of perfect peace in your embrace with the holy and pure, whose radiance shines like the radiance of heaven. Compassionate God, hold him close to you forever, so that his soul may be bound up in the bond of life eternal. May he find a home with you, and may he rest in peace, as together we say, Amen. Amen. The Kaddish prayer is on the prayer sheets that you might have picked up on your way in. I invite you to join the family in the recitation of Kaddish. It's not a prayer of mourning, it's a prayer of praise for giving us Paul and the life that he lived. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, be'alma divarach cherutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon u'v'yomechon u'v'chaye dechol beit Yisrael, ba'agala u'vizman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shemei Rabbah mevarach leolam u'lalmei almaya, Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yipa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei dekudusha barichu le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata da'miran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shalom rabba min shamayim v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav Hu yaseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, v'imru amen. May God grant peace to all of you who mourn and comfort all the bereaved here and everywhere as we say together, Amen. Those who sow in tears will reap in joy, will reap in joy. Those who sow will reap in joy. Hazorim bedima